Despite the countless Dragon Ball games that have appeared since the manga debuted in the mid-80s, the series has never needed them to sustain its popularity. Most are forgettable, some are good, but even fewer are truly great. Thanks to developer Arc System Works' particular talents, Dragon Ball FighterZ is one of the great ones, if not the best yet. Whether still or in motion, FighterZ art looks like Dragon Ball at its very best, adhering closely to the standards set by series creator Akira Toriyama. And no matter how you may have watched the show, the option to choose between Japanese and English voice acting makes it easy to feel connected to the events on screen.
You can't let your guard down, even if you've already won!
Within the convincing Dragon Ball shell lives a fast-paced 3v3 tag team fighting game that will feel familiar to Marvel vs. Capcom 3 veterans. But despite a few familiar parallels, FighterZ is distinctly Dragon Ball. Every character can jet through the air in a flash at any time, toss energy blasts like it's nothing, and unleash a flurry of small punches and kicks to stagger a hesitant opponent. These super beings are incredibly powerful, and FighterZ translates that energy to the screen perfectly. It also makes it easy for anyone to tap into that power, with relatively short special attack lists and 1-button or 2-button activations for universal mechanics. Like any great fighting game, FighterZ doesn't lose depth just because it's accessible. Super attacks and teleports are easy to pull off, but they come with timing and combo conditions that allow for expert-level analysis and strategic play. It's also important to properly manage the lone meter that fuels most of your special abilities, a setup that makes FighterZ's next move more unpredictable than usual, compared to some games with multiple ability-specific meters.
I'm unstoppable! Enjoy oblivion! Just to you! No escape! Exterminating!
Of course, you also don't have to be an aspiring online competitor to enjoy FighterZ, as it includes a significant story mode that can last a dozen hours or more if you seek out every possible cutscene. While a bit drawn out in places and relatively easy until the conclusion, it's still a treat for Dragon Ball fans with plenty of new vignettes starring classic characters, Dragon Ball Super characters on the roster notwithstanding. Though the plot is split into 3 arcs, you are technically seeing one arc from different perspectives, with a few alternate events to keep things interesting. Because there's practically zero time spent introducing you to the characters or their world, it's difficult to imagine how a newcomer to Dragon Ball would understand things like the Ginyu Force's proclivity to pose dramatically, or the reason why Krillin doesn't have a nose, let alone the broad concepts of Super Saiyans and Dragon Balls. Then again, the mix of oddball antics and hyper-serious face-offs is inherently appealing for the confident cartoon expression on display, which requires no additional context to enjoy. As in combat, Arc's capable design skills make the 3D models and environments and cutscenes look stunningly close to actual 2D animation. There are moments when you feel like you're watching a new episode of Dragon Ball Z. But there is a catch. You're forced to press a button to advance dialogue, rather than allowed to kick back and watch the show. When FighterZ gets achingly close to recreating the look of the anime, the forced interaction feels like a step in the wrong direction, albeit a minor one in the grand scheme of things. Story Mode's real downfall is how repetitive it becomes. You fight clones of only a portion of the game's overall roster ad nauseum. Each chapter is presented like a map with locations connected by a branching path. In order to get to the chapter boss, you have to navigate the board and pick and choose your fights along the way. Given that there are optional pathways in each chapter and that you can concoct your own team, it's not surprising to learn that there are optional cutscenes to unlock depending on these conditions. Despite the rewards being largely enjoyable, after a handful of hours fighting lackluster opponents, the idea of replaying story chapters to see a quirky character interaction is unfortunately one that's easy to sideline. Similarly, the game's basic small overworld feels unnecessary even though it attempts to add value. Modes are divided among spokes around a circular hub, and you can run around as small versions of the game's characters, sometimes in alternate outfits. The game tries to earn your interest through unlockable avatars, but even if this sounds good, you can only earn them through randomized loot boxes. You earn money as you fight and complete story mode milestones, and these can be cashed in for a capsule which turns into a random cosmetic item. There are unfortunately no alternate costumes available for combat. Rather than harm the game, this system just feels unnecessary, as none of the rewards are critical to enjoying what matters most: participating in explosive battles and enjoying interactions between Dragon Ball's lovably bizarre characters. Though merely a small piece of the overall puzzle, the rare dramatic finishes are perhaps the most respectable and impressive nod to fans in FighterZ. Anyone who's spent years watching Dragon Ball Z unfold over nearly 300 episodes will gasp the first time they trigger one, which will only happen with certain matchups under particular conditions. They have nothing to do with FighterZ's story, but they have everything to do with the revered history of the series at large.
孫悟空さん一人じゃない。ここにもいたということだ。
FighterZ is complex and distinct enough to be enjoyed by fighting game competitors, but there's no question that it's been designed to tap into the hearts of Dragon Ball's most dedicated fans. And no doubt, those same qualities will win people over who've never given the series a chance before. Where past games attempted to get there through huge rosters and deliberately predictable trips down memory lane, FighterZ has bottled the essence of what makes the series' characters, animation, and sense of humor so beloved, and reconfigured it into something new, a Dragon Ball fighting game that can go toe-to-toe with the best of the genre.
この痛みがまた俺を強くする。